A single disrespectful act in a bank's office destroyed a $15 billion deal in seconds, all because a manager dared to throw an old woman's papers on the floor. The morning sun spilled across the city skyline as Amina Johnson, one of the most powerful CEOs in the world, stepped out of her sleek black car. She was tall, confident, and dressed in a navy blue suit that spoke of elegance and authority. But today, she wasn't alone. Walking beside her was her grandmother, a gentle woman with silver hair tucked beneath a scarf, holding a modest folder close to her chest. This was not just another business meeting. It was the day Amina would finalize a $15 billion deal that could transform communities and create thousands of jobs. Inside the bank's glass doors, staff members straightened their posture, whispering her name in awe. Everyone knew who she was, yet few expected to see her grandmother by her side. As they entered, the sound of heels clicking against the marble floor echoed like a drumbeat, drawing every eye in the lobby. Some employees smiled politely, others stared, curious why such a powerful leader would bring an elderly woman to such a high-stakes negotiation. But Amina knew the answer. Her grandmother was her source of strength, the woman who had raised her with wisdom, discipline, and grace. Amina wanted her there not as a guest, but as a witness to history. The moment felt larger than business. It felt like destiny. Security guards opened the doors to the executive meeting room, and the air grew heavier, charged with anticipation. Behind those doors, billions rested on Amina's decision, and her grandmother carried the final pieces of paperwork needed to seal the deal. Hand in hand, the two women walked forward, one representing the future of power, the other carrying the weight of history, both unaware that within minutes, a single act of disrespect would change everything. The heavy doors opened with a slow creak, and Amina Johnson led her grandmother into the polished meeting room, a space designed to intimidate with its long mahogany table, tall leather chairs, and walls lined with glossy portraits of past banking executives. The air smelled faintly of coffee and cold ambition. A row of senior staff sat waiting, some with eager smiles, others with cautious eyes, knowing that the future of their bank rested on this deal. Most of them rose to greet her with handshakes, their voices filled with respect and even a touch of nervousness. But at the far end of the table sat one man who didn't move, Mr. Harris, the branch manager. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, tapping a pen against the wood as though every second of this meeting was beneath him. His eyes skimmed over Amina, then flicked briefly to her grandmother, and the corner of his mouth curled into a smirk. The contrast was striking. While the room seemed to hold its breath in her presence, this single man radiated arrogance. Amina, however, didn't allow his cold reception to shake her. She helped her grandmother into a chair at her side and gracefully took her own seat, her posture upright, her expression calm, her silence more commanding than any words. She opened her briefcase, ready to discuss the final details of the $15 billion partnership, while her grandmother carefully held onto the folder of important papers. Around the table, some staff exchanged uneasy glances, sensing tension already building. The meeting had only just begun, yet an unspoken clash of pride and power hovered over the polished surface of the table, a storm waiting for the smallest spark to ignite. The meeting pressed forward, voices low, documents sliding across the polished table, but all the while, Mr. Harris's dismissive smirk never faded. Amina remained composed, guiding the discussion with calm authority, her tone steady and precise. At the perfect moment, she nodded toward her grandmother, who quietly rose from her chair, the folder of final documents clutched in her hands. Her movements were slow but filled with grace, the kind of dignity that spoke of a lifetime of resilience. She extended the folder toward Mr. Harris, expecting a simple gesture of professionalism. But instead of standing or even reaching respectfully, he snatched the papers from her fingers with a sharp motion, glanced at them as if they were worthless, and without warning, let them drop to the floor. The sound of the folder hitting the marble echoed through the room like a gunshot.
For a split second, time froze.
Gasps slipped from the mouths of the staff, some shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting away in shame. Amina's grandmother bent down slowly, her trembling hands reaching for the scattered papers, yet her back was straight, her face calm, refusing to show humiliation. The insult was clear. Mr. Harris had not only disrespected a guest but the very woman who had shaped the CEO sitting before him. Amina's jaw tightened. She did not rush to her grandmother's side, for she knew rushing would give the insult more power. Instead she watched silently, her eyes sharp, unblinking, piercing the arrogant man who had just crossed a line that could never be undone. The room grew heavy, as though everyone understood that something far greater than money had just been placed on the table. One careless act of pride had awakened a storm no contract could contain. For a long, breathless moment, the room was frozen in silence. No one dared to move, no one dared to speak. The papers, now neatly gathered back into the folder by Amina's grandmother, rested on the table like fragile glass. Amina sat still, her face calm, her shoulders steady, yet the air around her carried a quiet intensity that made even the most confident executives look down at their shoes. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't slam her hand, and yet her silence was louder than thunder. Mr. Harris shifted slightly in his chair, the smugness on his face faltering as he realized the weight of the eyes staring at him. Amina finally reached for the folder, her fingers brushing over her grandmother's hand, a silent reassurance that dignity had not been lost. She placed the papers squarely in front of her and folded her hands over them, her dark eyes locking onto Harris with an expression that was both unreadable and terrifyingly powerful. Every second stretched longer, and the tension strangled the room until even the sound of a pen rolling off the table made heads turn. Then, with a voice steady and clear, Amina broke the silence. "This deal," she said, her tone sharp as glass, "is finished." No anger, no shouting, just the firm finality of truth. Gasps rippled through the staff, some choking back disbelief while others sat paralyzed. A $15 billion partnership had just been undone in a single sentence, and the man who thought he held power suddenly looked very small in his leather chair. Amina rose with grace, helped her grandmother to her feet, and the two women prepared to walk away, leaving behind not just a broken deal, but a lesson that would echo long after the silence ended. The sound of chairs creaking filled the room as Amina and her grandmother moved toward the door, their steps slow but unshakable, the weight of dignity guiding every movement. Behind them, the executives scrambled, whispering frantically, their faces pale with the realization of what had just happened. A $15 billion partnership, months in the making, collapsed in a matter of seconds, not because of failed numbers or impossible terms, but because of one man's arrogance. Mr. Harris sat frozen in his chair, his pen no longer tapping, his smirk completely erased. He tried to speak, to call out, but no words left his throat. The shareholders who would soon hear of this disaster would not forgive him. The loss was too great, the shame too deep. As Amina pushed open the heavy doors, the silence inside the room felt suffocating, but beyond those doors was freedom, a clean break from a deal poisoned by disrespect. She guided her grandmother through the hallway with quiet pride, her head high, her heels striking the marble floor like a drumbeat of victory. Outside, the morning sun still shone, but now it seemed brighter, as if the world itself had witnessed justice unfold. Reporters waiting in the lobby sensed something monumental had shifted, snapping photos as Amina passed without a word. The deal was gone, but her legacy had only grown stronger. In that single act, she had proven that no amount of money could ever outweigh respect. The story spread across the globe within hours, a cautionary tale for boardrooms and bankers everywhere. And while the bank struggled under the weight of its mistake, Amina and her grandmother walked away together, side by side, knowing that dignity once defended is worth far more than billions.